There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We are here today with Mike Luzio. He is a co-founder and managing director of the LVE Group. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Good to talk to you, James.
I'm excited to chat with you, Mike. So we'll get to this later in the interview, but I actually first saw you on, I think it was a Daily V episode from Gary Vaynerchuk. I didn't realize that we were in the middle of our first conversation a few weeks ago when I was like, your story sounds familiar. I think I've actually seen you in a Daily V episode. We'll get to that later in the story. But Mike, I want listeners to understand a little bit of context, a little bit of what you're doing now, and what you did leading up to the LVE Group. So could you explain what is the LVE Group all about, and then tell us kind of a brief glimpse of your prior life before starting this company?
Yeah, so the LVE Group, LVE standing for Luzio versus Everybody Group. I started this about a year ago. The goal was twofold, right? It was I wanted a business component side to it, and I wanted a social media component side to it, right? I always knew that I could build a consulting firm after coming out of my other business, which was Industry Retail Group. It was going to be very easy for me because of the connections and the relationships that I made at C levels with a ton of different companies. I knew I could go in and build a consulting group that goes in and helps some of those business with things that they're doing and what have you. Really easy for me. But the thing I did a little bit different this time, and we talked about that and how Gary Vaynerchuk influenced that a little bit, was I decided use my big personality and build a social media following, because I could build that consulting brand on my own and do that for the rest of my life, because the exit I had from my business was very, very good. I didn't really have to work again, but I said, you know what? Let me do it a little differently. Let me use my kind of big character, my big personality, if you will, and try to build a social media following. And in essence, put the darn LVE Group on steroids. And we're having some great success. We invest in businesses. I'm always looking to invest in small, mid-sized businesses. I'm looking at, how to take a business that's doing maybe $1 million revenue and saying, hey, let's take you to 50 million in revenue, or a business who's doing 50 million and saying, hey, I'm looking to make an exit from this business and I need help to understand on how to do that. All things that I'm very, very good at and I've done.
I love it. And so with this interview, Mike, we're going to be focusing on the two parts of the story. One, I love kind of how you built your first business. I don't know if it was your first business, but the last business that you exited, you really built it on the back of relationships. And I'm also very passionate about relationships and kind of intentionally creating very strategic relationships, nurturing those relationships. So you built that last business on the back of that. And then we're going to transition and talk about how, those relationships combined now with the social stuff that you guys are doing is allowing you to grow the LVE Group. So let's go back to your last business. Talk to us a little bit about how you went about creating relationships with all of these senior level, C-level decision makers at these different, massive companies that you now have relationships today. But walk us back when you didn't. How did you go about creating those relationships?
Yeah, so definitely the first business that I had was my only business, right? I kind of fell into being an entrepreneur. I never had these grandiose ideas of being an entrepreneur, but I fell into this. Somebody came to me with an idea. I was at a rut in my job. I was doing very well in my job, but I made the decision and said, the hell with it. I'm 27 years old. I'm going to take a shot, right? And we did. And we started this my last business, IRG, and it was built on relationships. People talk about marketing and how did you market yourself? Listen, I didn't have the money, right? I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I didn't come from money. I got a great family. My father was in law enforcement and my mother was a teacher. But this was, how am I going to build this thing? Because I don't have capital, right, to go out there and do traditional marketing. So, what we really did, it was built on the cornerstone of relationships, going out, cultivating relationships, and then using those relationships to form others. I met a guy a long time ago who's a very, I won't say his name, but he's a real powerful guy. And I said, how do you know so many people? And he said to me, I make it my business to know everybody. And that was in like 2006. And I said to myself at that point, if I am going to be successful, I got to make it my business to know everyone. Traditional marketing for me was, we put out PR press releases through companies like PR Newswire, PR Web, right? Because it was cheap, it was easy. But what I would do, I was always a big believer in, you got to spend money to make money. I would do networking events, my own events. Maybe that was renting out a suite at Giant Stadium. Then once I started getting things going and I had some really strong customers, and I'd say, bring my customers to Giant Stadium, spend the 20 grand on the suite, and I'd bring prospects there. Because my best marketers by far were my customers, right? Yeah. Look, I could sit in a room all day and I could sell anybody, and I was a pretty good sales guy. But at the end of the day, when I had a C-level or a C-suite sitting in a Giant Stadium with me talking to a prospect saying how good these guys are, and everything that Mike and his team say happens, dude, there's nothing more important. Yeah. And I think what I did a very good job of, and my team did a good job of, is we never burned any bridges, right? I if we screwed up as an organization, which we did, like everybody does, I got on the phone, I said, we screwed up and we fixed it, right? And that was able to give me a strong foundation in these relationships. When I spoke at Rutgers 2 months ago, I stood up and I said, listen, the key to growing a successful business is all about cultivating and relationships. It's all about it.
Yep. No, I love it. I'm doing something very similar right now. I'm not at a place where I can, rent a suite with a Giant Stadium or anything like that, but just doing dinners and creating, things that don't necessarily even cost $20,000, but maybe cost, $500 to have a handful of folks, come around dinner, and just talk shop and have a great conversation while we're stuffing our faces. I'm really excited. I've actually got one tonight that I'm going to that I've organized with a co-host. So I love the idea of like building a firm foundation on the back of relationships. I just read a book. We just had him on the podcast recently. His name's Jason Gaynard, and he wrote a book called Mastermind Dinners, talks about kind of the logistics of how to put these type of experiences together. But it sounds like you nailed it, Mike. I want to now transition into, if that was how you built your last business, I want to talk about the transition here of you meeting Gary Vee, and then how that kind of interaction has led to what you guys are now doing with the LVE Group. Obviously still capitalizing on the relationships you have, but also incorporating the brand building. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So, one of my big taglines that I use with everybody is take every meeting, right? And after I sold the business and became, obviously financially wealthy, it was a situation where I had a lot of different, what we call high net worth financial planners were calling me. Oh, I want to take care of you. I went, oh, you're the great, they all, whatever. It's funny. Yeah. And when you sell your business, how that happens. And entrepreneurs out there who do that know this. And I got a call from a guy, and someone said, meet this guy. And I said, great. So I said, come to the meeting, right? Come to a dinner. Like, let's go meet over dinner and let's listen to what you have to say. Take every meeting. I'm comfortable with where I'm at with my financial planner, but this guy may come up with something. So this guy says to me in a meeting after talking to me, he looks at me and he goes, my God, you got a lot of energy. Your story's incredible. And he goes, do you know a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk? And full disclosure to your audience, who's a lot of guys who love Vaynerchuk, I'm like, I have no clue who Gary is. And it's not a slap in the face. I didn't know who he was. Yeah. And he goes, you remind me of him, right? And I said, great. He said, and I know the guy a little bit, the mutual connection or whatever. And I said, great. So I go home, I check out his content. I'm like, wow, this guy's pretty crazy. He reminds me of me, right? His story's similar with the wine library. The only difference is he used social media. And he goes, look, I said to the guy, hey, if I send an email to Vaynerchuk and put your name in the subject line, so at least look at it, you think he'll take it? I sent the note to Vaynerchuk. I put his in the subject line, and I just said, hey, listen, I think we're very similar, cut from the same cloth. I don't know what I want to do the rest of my life, and I'd love to meet you. Week goes by, I get a call from his assistant, and his assistant says to me, Gary wants to talk to you for 5 minutes. We get on a phone call, and 2 minutes in, he goes, I got to meet you. Right? So we go out, we grab dinner, and then he brings me in, we meet his team, and he goes, listen, if you're going to do something on your own, you got to use social media. Whether it's podcast, you got to do something that's repeatable, something that's evergreen, put it out on social media. And I said, what's that? He goes, Mike, if you read the cover of the front page of the Wall Street Journal, the way you do it, he goes, I probably watch you because you're out of your mind, right? And his whole team kind of was like, we agree. So we were like, all right, we know nothing about social media. Chris, my business partner at the time, I knew nothing about it. And I said, all right, outside of jumping on Facebook and looking at pictures of people that, how they turned out or what they look like now, I said, all right, let's give it a shot. And here we are. I listened to Vaynerchuk, and here we are, a little over a year later. We've got a heck of a following on Instagram. We created this, what I called 52 American success stories. We did it on Facebook. We've got thousands of likes. We've got 3 million impressions. And you know what? We went out and built a social media brand. And the point of that brand was get eyes on me, get eyes on the brand, build the brand, build a second company. And it's working. And I'm having a great time doing it. And I owe that all to Gary Vee and his.
I love it. And so Mike, in talking about kind of the to the naysayers, to the person that is saying, and I just don't know that social is going to bring, the type of deals to me. I'd rather be doing the relationship stuff that Mike was talking about earlier. It makes much more sense for me to go out and try to get, a dinner together or an event together where I can have 15 of the perfect people, come in. So from a business development standpoint, can you speak to that person who might be, a bit of a social media naysayer, and speak to some of the core benefits that you've seen with social and how that supplements kind of your passion for relationships?
Yeah. I mean, I think you should, it's everything. It's both, right? I mean, look, I probably was a social media naysayer, and look, putting myself on camera and getting out there and doing all the things I was doing, that was stepping out of my comfort zone. Building my first business, IRG, and when I was 27, was stepping outside of my comfort zone. I didn't come out of the womb thinking I was going to be an entrepreneur. When I was 21 years old, there was no thought that I was going to run my own business, right? So when 27, I stepped out. This was me stepping out again. I absolutely, to your point earlier, listen, dinners are everything, man. I made all of my monies on dinners, right? Going out, having a nice bottle of wine, getting to know the person, building that core foundation of a real relationship. I mean, I can say those relationships that I built with those C-suites at all those companies are real. Those are real friendships, right? Yeah. But the social media aspect was, hey, if you're not, and this is what I preach to the choir now, if you're and I get traditionalists, I get the guy or gal who's 50 plus years old and is like, man, I don't know. But man, listen, social media is real. It works. I'm seeing it firsthand. I was on the cover of New Jersey Business Magazine in November as the face of this campaign they did. It's called the Big Shot campaign. And let me tell you, how did they get to me? How did their advertising? They got to me through social. They looked at social and said, this kid's from New Jersey. He's kind of out of his mind. He's kind of had some success. We want to rebrand ourselves a little bit, go to a little younger audience. They found me on social. They put me on the cover of the mag. The stuff that comes to me via LinkedIn, via Instagram, via Facebook is off the charts. And what did I also do? Once I sold the business, I didn't want to die. I wanted to remain relevant. And I said, you know what? Put myself out there. Now I get all these C-suites who know me, call me and going, dude, I'm loving what you're doing, man. And quite frankly, that's all an angle to stay relevant on social, so that they're like, Luzio's not dead. That dude's out there. He's changing lives. He's doing cool stuff. And it's great. And it's totally working without question.
I love kind of the firsthand stories there of the fact that it is bringing opportunities to you, because I'm experiencing the exact same thing, Mike. As passionate as I am about relationships, what I found with social, particularly with LinkedIn recently, probably in the last 6 months, have really been diving into that platform. And it's allowed me to scale relationships and engage with other people's content that I otherwise, most of these people I've never even met in person, but it feels like I have a genuine relationship with them because we engage with each other's content so much on the platform, and we're sending messages back and forth. We're collaborating with each other. We're jumping on the phone and doing calls about things. I've gotten some of the best advice that I've ever gotten in my business because of relationships that started on LinkedIn and have blossomed into real friendships, even if we're not in the same city and we haven't met in real life. And so I just think the ability to scale relationships with social is so powerful. And I want anybody listening to this, if they're not taking social seriously already, which I think a lot of the people listening to this are, you absolutely need to. Mike, I love your story. I love I love how you've leveraged both relationships and the new dynamic of social. If somebody wants to stay connected with you, they want to learn more about the LVE Group, or they just want to stay connected with all the stuff you're doing, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, connect with me on LinkedIn, Mike Luzio, right? Check us out on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram at Michael Luzio. Facebook, we've got a platform called Luzio versus Everybody. Listen, come one, come all. I mean, LinkedIn is great for me because, to your point, it's unbelievable the power of things like LinkedIn and what it's doing. Stay connected. I want to reach out to people. My goal here is I'm building a business, but look, I want to inspire people. When I die, I want people to look at me and say, not here lies a man who took $15,000 and turned it into 50 plus million. Here lies a guy who really inspired the world. I want to forget about what I did in the past, and I want to do something great in the future. And I think we're building that here. And I appreciate the opportunity to come on with you, James. I really do.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mike. Again, this has been fantastic. So I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, man. Take care. Talk to you soon.
To ensure that you never miss an episode of the B2B Growth Show, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device.
If you'd like to connect with B2B executives from all over the world, make sure to join our private Facebook community. There are some incredible conversations happening inside this group. To join, visit b2bgrowthshow.com/FB.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.